Hello everyone, I'm Auntie Kara, but this video is not for kids. This is another edition of book reviews for grown-ups who love fairy tales. Today we are going to be talking about The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. And wow, what a book. I just finished it last night and I'm still feeling a little flustered by how wonderful it is. I'm a longtime fan of Erin Morgenstern since I read The Night Circus. It was at the time one of the most beautifully written works of art I've ever read. And for a long time I avoided reading The Starless Sea because I was a little worried it wasn't going to live up to the same hype and magic that The Night Circus was for me. But let me tell you, it really does, and this one I might even like more. This book is a book for lovers of books. It is incredible. I looked up a little bit of the history of Erin Morgenstern and I found out her mom was a librarian, so she spent a lot of time in libraries, and you can really see that in this book. It is a book that is so eloquent. Again, her writing is just beautiful. Like, it's a work of art, the way she thoughtfully puts words together and constructs the story in a way that everything connects. There's no loose ends. But it's a story that highlights the importance of stories in the world, and for our psyche and our health and our awareness. It, as someone who loves stories, and I've done my degree in English literature and cultural studies, and I really understand the importance that fiction has in our world and the way it can relate to giving us a little picture into the way people think and lived and were all throughout history, and how books can immortalize that, and stories, even when they're ever evolving, can immortalize that. And I have never before read a book that so intricately highlights that, and the importance of that in our world and our culture. So if you are a big book nerd like I am, definitely check it out. It will not disappoint. So as far as the story goes, like I said, it's a story about stories. So when it starts out, it has a bunch of different stories laid out in sections, and initially you're kind of like, oh, is this going to be like more of an anthology series? But all of the stories connect, and all of the stories circle around being a part of one larger story, even though initially they seem so different. The characters are really captivating. They really come alive off the screen. I was very invested in the journey and the love and the adventure and the wondering and the curiosity of these characters. I want to be their friends, which is really what you want from a good book. So it follows Zachary as the main character, and it follows him into this world called the Harbor of the Starless Sea. And until you read the book, it's kind of hard to fully grasp what it is, because so much of this book is metaphor come to life. So the Harbor of the Starless Sea and the Starless Sea itself is kind of the culmination of different stories. There's this whole thing about the moon falling in love with the sun, and time with fate, and needing a place for those things to connect without the stars watching them. So it kind of comes to be through like these mythic fairy tales, but it also is ever evolving into the lives of the characters we see in the book. So it's this like magical place with corridors and all sorts of rooms that lead to other places, and time works differently there, and just books in every corner and literary references everywhere, and there's this whole thing with swords and bees and crowns and hearts, and there's all these different pathways. It is quite an incredible journey, and I'm hesitant to give you too much details because I don't want to ruin anything. Because part of the fun of this book is figuring out how it all fits into reality. And there's multiple times where you're confused as to whether this is going on in someone's imagination or a dream or if it's real, and even the characters themselves aren't really sure. And the book itself, even sometimes I'm not sure if it's ever concretely decided what is in reality and what isn't, which also kind of adds to the magic of it, because at the core, the experience is real. And yeah, it is so beautiful. I think I'm just going to dive in and give you guys a taste of the writing, because there's multiple times in this book where I had to digest it very slowly because it is so rich, and it's like poetry in prose. So it's not a, cozy, simple read that you can flip through in one day. There's a lot of depth, and there's a lot of substance, and there's a lot of thought that went into this writing, and just, I would love to meet Erin Morgenstern, because that mind must be absolutely incredible. All right, here's the first section I'm going to read for you guys. Far beneath the surface of the earth, hidden from the sun and the moon, upon the shores of the Starless Sea, there is a labyrinth collection of tunnels and rooms filled with stories. Stories written in books and sealed in jars and painted on walls, odes inscribed onto skin and pressed into rose petals, tales laid in tiles upon the floors, bits of plot worn away by passing feet, legends carved in crystal and hung from chandeliers, stories catalogued and cared for and revered, old stories preserved while new stories spring up around them. The place is sprawling, yet intimate. It is difficult to measure its breadth. Halls fold into rooms or galleries, and stairs twist downward or upward to alcoves or arcades. Everywhere there are doors leading to new spaces and new stories and new secrets to be discovered, and everywhere there are books. It is a sanctuary for storytellers and story keepers and story lovers. They eat and sleep and dream, surrounded by chronicles and histories and myths. Some stay for hours or days before returning to the world above, but others remain for weeks or years, living in shared or private chambers and spending their hours reading or studying or writing, discussing and creating with their fellow residents, or working in solitude. Of those who remain, a few choose to devote themselves to this space, to this temple of stories. I mean, who wouldn't want to live there and experience that if you are a lover of books? All right, I've got one more for you. This is one that I've taken a picture of and sent to many people. It's just fantastic. Paper is fragile, even when bound with string and cloth or leather. The majority of the stories within the harbor on the Starless Sea are captured on paper, in books or on scrolls, or folded into paper birds, or suspended from ceilings. There are stories that are more fragile still. For every tale carved in rock, there are more inscribed on autumn leaves or woven into spider webs. There are stories wrapped in silk so their pages do not fall to dust, and stories that have already succumbed, fragments collected and kept in urns. They are fragile things, less sturdy than their cousins who are told aloud and learned by heart. And there are always those who would watch Alexandria burn. There always have been, there always will be. So there are always guardians. All right, so goes beyond saying I love this book. It's definitely going to be one of my new favorites. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you have read it, or if you read it, please feel free to leave me a comment below. I love to talk about books, and especially this one. I could talk for hours and hours, but this is where I will leave you for today. Alright, so if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more. I'll see you guys next time. Ta-ta for now.